Welcome, folks, to the first ever data-driven process design workshop. I'm really stoked about today's content. It's a little bit of an unusual deviation from our standard sort of financial-oriented content because we got an awesome collaboration going today with the gurus over at LeadSimple talking about data-driven process design. It's some fantastic concepts that we've got stored up for you today. And to kick it all off, just jump into chat, tell us where you're tuning in from. And I really want to keep this interactive because we have this isn't going to be so much about numbers. It's going to be about numbers because it's data-driven process design, but I don't have a lot of numbers to share with you. It's conceptual, it's a framework. And it's a framework that we think is going to bring a lot of transformation to the industry and hopefully to your business specifically. So jump into chat. Let's get that going. Tell us where you're tuning in from. I'm super stoked to be partnering with the gents over at LeadSimple on today's topic of data-driven process design. Zach Berkompas, head of sales at LeadSimple. You're still head of sales, right, Zach?
Correct.
Okay, they didn't fire you. That's good. There's too many Berkompases to get fired. I don't know. It's like eternal job safety. One of them goes never mind. All right. And Wolfgang Croskey at Croskey Real Estate, also LeadSimple guru, and Peter Lohmann, owner RL Property Management and creator of one of the best email lists in the industry. If you haven't gotten on Peter's email list, you better do that. And me, author of the NARPM Accounting Standards and Chief Strategy Officer here at ProfitCoach. And we are talking about something that I hope generates a lot of questions today. So if you want to just interact with us, throw out a comment, be sure and do that in chat. If you have a specific question that you really want Zach, Peter, or Wolf to answer, put that in the Q&A box so we can make sure we're tracking with that. All right, let's dive in. I didn't need the music again, so let's just do it. That was fun. All right.
Yeah, music-driven process.
Yes. We're moving from a financial focus to more of an operational focus here. And the goal is to facilitate a transformation of mindset in the way you think about your ops and your processes. And if you guys have been on my Profit Power Hour, you know I'm switching up the wording a little bit here. We are moving from operational fog to operational clarity, and from hand-me-down, word-of-mouth process creation to data-driven process design. Did you guys catch that? And Wolf, you look like you're on the edge of your seat wanting to say something.
Yeah, can you explain that? Because like when I saw, I was like, hand-me-down process, this isn't like the Goodwill. What are you talking about? So I think you need to explain exactly what that term is and what that means. I don't think people may understand that.
Sure. Let's just go right there. Did you start your own business, Wolf?
Yes and no. A lot was hand-me-down from my dad and literally paper checklists, and that's what we built off of. And then I bought some binders and checklists from, ancient gurus and, kind of worked off of that. So
that's hand-me-down and word of mouth. Right.
So you're saying like when people say, "Hey, Wolf, can I get a copy of your LeadSimple process?" and I give them the link?
Yeah, that would be like network-based. Okay. Networking. Word of mouth, right? Hand-me-down is you inherited it from your dad, right?
Got it.
Neither of those are bad necessarily, but the idea is what would it actually look like to design a process in terms of data that tells us what is actually the most efficient way to run a process. And Wolf, you are actually the genesis behind this concept. When we were on a webinar back in December, on December 6th, we were talking a little bit about this concept of measuring process results. And you basically made the point, you said, once we have data on how processes are being performed and executed at the process level, that's actually going to create a significant amount of standardization, because once I find out that Peter's process or whoever process is better in a certain respect than mine, then I'm going to use his best practice. So I'm working off of you, baby. All right. We'll get to that in just a second. and ultimately want to help you all, if you're on today, move from, hey, we think we're pretty efficient, but we don't really know, to actually having a standard of success in your business that's based off of measurable benchmarks. Okay, so that's the framework. That's the kind of the tee up. And I want to get the conversation going in chat here a little bit. And I want to just get some feedback on kind of the question that I asked Wolf here. How did you arrive at your current process design? So go ahead and make sure you're chatting everyone in the chat box. How did you arrive at your current process design? We heard from Wolf on this. Peter, how about you? How have you guys designed your processes?
Yeah, so we started with, I mean, honestly, some of it was written out pen and paper, really, really early days, and then very quickly just turned that into like a Word document, and eventually moved into Process Street and then LeadSimple. But the origin of it, because I didn't come from any type of a real estate background or family, I never worked in the industry, it was all made up. We literally just made up what we thought should be happening after a lease was signed or after a new client came on board. Um, there was almost no science behind it, or um, it, it, I didn't know what to do. So in fact, that actually drove the creation of the processes, because I didn't have any sort of intuition or instinct or habits to fall back on. So I needed something written to follow. And so every time we would execute a lease renewal or a move out or whatever, I would just print off a new checklist, check it off as we went, and then I would kind of mark it up like, oh, I actually want this one to be first, or this is redundant or whatever. So it was a very organic process for us.
Yeah. Yeah. How about Zach? What do you see? You obviously see a lot of have a lot of conversations with people that are coming to LeadSimple. Like, what is your sense of how people come up with their current processes? And maybe your response is half of them don't have documented processes. I don't know what it is. Like, what's the state of process creation out there?
About 50% have either really outdated or very little documentation for the core processes. And we're talking like owner onboarding, property onboarding, move-ins, move-outs, lease renewals, delinquencies, evictions, owner offboarding, turns. Those would be like a lot of the core ones. And then there's all the, ancillary processes as well. But, and then if they do have them, usually they're Google Doc, Word Doc format, or if they're a little bit more, they might have like a checklist that's actually built out in some generic tool like Asana, or Process Street. And anyone that has, or spreadsheets are really common too, for certain. They're pulling exports, export, every month, and running spreadsheets. So those are kind of the primary places people are coming from, but there isn't any sort of dashboarding or like driving towards efficiency. It's pretty much manually driven. Even all the communication in the process is pretty manually driven as well. And a lot of times there aren't even just what are our standard email templates and what is it, how are we communicating so that our tone and content is consistent across the board. And really that's no bad. That's just like you're in the trenches, you're working on the business, or well, you're working in the business, and there's different breaking points. 100 units, then there's another breaking point around 250, definitely breaking point at 400 as you're like moving up. And that's where you get into like operations design too, and departmental and pod structure and all of that. And as you're hitting those different levels, you find that you need more, especially if you're looking to leverage remote staff and have them actually consistently do the process the way you want them to.
Yeah, and Zach, like what you said, like this is just the way it is. It's no bad. Like surely, Shirley's response here in chat: going to conferences, looking for better systems, networking with other people that seem to be doing a better job, adding systems. That's good. Like, good for you to do that. The question is there a better way, or could we do even better if we had data to actually help us? So that brings me to the next kind of question I want to talk about. What for you guys, maybe Peter and Wolf specifically, like what's your current experience mining operational process level data? how does that work for you? Are you able to do it? Are you able to compare yourself to your peers right now? What do you think is the state of like the way that data is shaping the way that we actually do processes at this point?
So I just dropped an emoji of what it is for me. It is extremely, extremely difficult for people to get the data they need. So
Yeah.
we use AppFolio, lots of reports in there. Most of them can't help me because I need to know these items of, how many tasks are overdue, what processes, and then more importantly, help me identify bottlenecks in our process so that I can fix it. And without data, it's really hard to find that. Well, it's hard to get that data. A lot of the data that we want for process design or, monitoring our systems is hard to tease out. So then asking a remote team member, hey, can you update this scorecard once a week with this piece? And they're like, how am I supposed to do that? So then you got to
Yeah.
create a Loom video that says, okay, get these 4 reports, take this, divide it by 2, add 3, put it over here. It's complicated. So in my opinion, there currently isn't an easy way to tease out the data needed to improve processes.
Yeah. Any different
Yeah.
perspective on that, Peter?
Hard agree with that. It's very difficult and time consuming to pull out operational data or process data from our property management softwares, if it's even possible at all.
Yeah.
So we're on Buildium. I think it's kind of the same. I mean, the reporting that's in our property management software, we've taken to calling it property accounting software because really that's what it is at its heart.
Yeah.
It's accounting oriented.
Right.
And so the reports are all accounting oriented for the most part as well. They're not process or data oriented. They're more about income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, rental owner ending balances. Like it's a lot of things with dollar signs. And those things are obviously important, but that's just the beginning of running a successful management company. So, when I think about like what I want out of data, I think one of the things that comes to mind right away is how long does it take to do something?
Yeah.
I mean, that seems kind of important to know, right? Like, if I owned a factory that was manufacturing cars, I would want to know how long does it take us to make a car?
Yeah.
It's like probably the most important metric, and yet I have no clue
Right.
how long it takes to complete a move-in process, a move-out process, a lease renewal process. Now, we can get data on the day we started and the day it completed, but that's really not what I'm talking about. I'm saying, did it take us 2 person hours, 20 person hours? How long does it take this person versus that person to do the same process or tasks? So that level of granularity, it sounds kind of like way down in the weeds, but when you add it up, it's just trying to answer the question, how long does it take us to do our work? Which is really important in a labor cost dominated environment, which property management is.
Yeah. And the I would say one of the things that creates a major breakthrough for this is the advent of workflow automation softwares, because as you said, property accounting softwares don't really have the task level orientation that you could even really use to kind of collect this kind of data. So this takes me to, I think, I don't know, 9 months ago, Zach, you and I got on the phone and it was just like, I think I called you up one afternoon and I'm like, I've been thinking about operational metrics for a while, and like I've got this concept of how this could actually be enabled and empowered specifically with a LeadSimple platform. Because now for the first time we have broad adoption of a platform with task level data. And so I just want to say, like, shout out to LeadSimple for making this possible, what we're about to talk about from a data perspective. Just kind of high level, ProfitCoach is now an official integration with LeadSimple. And what we're talking about is the ability to actually mine real-time process and task level data and measure the relationship between key events to do the kind of tracking that you guys are talking about. So we're going to dive into like, what is the framework that makes sense around this? And because I will say, and I'll be honest, like we've already built out dashboards, but in terms of like industry standardization and benchmarking, which is where we're headed, we're on the front side of this. And so what we're going to talk about is really the key to the mission that both LeadSimple and ProfitCoach share. I think we share the exact same mission statement, which is helping people become and achieve more than they thought possible. And this is true for us. This is true for our teams. This is also true for what we want to help enable inside of our clients' companies. And so, we ask ourselves, both at LeadSimple and ProfitCoach, how do we create maximum value for our clients? A lot of this, I think, has to do with our ability to help property management teams become and achieve more. Like if we can actually do that and enable more productivity at the property management team level, property management entrepreneurs gain success, property owners experience more value, and the value chain just goes on from there. So what I want to introduce is a framework that's really based off of this concept of helping people become and achieve more. And I think both of our organizations sort of summarize this with the slogan BAM, which is the short version of this. And what we want to talk about is what does it look like to use data to actually help owners and residents experience more value, and teams inside of property management create more value in a way that results in BAM for everybody around. So what we wanted to look at is a concept of data-driven process design. And what does that really mean functionally? And then in the second half of this webinar today, we're actually going to apply these concepts to specific metrics around property marketing as a concrete example. All right, so guys, I'm going to go through this, and I want your feedback. I want you to object, and we're going to make this interactive here. But the basic concept is that in order for a property management business to succeed, there has to be a repeatable way of creating significant owner and resident value that's generated by consistent team performance. Okay. And what we believe is that what property management companies do is they solve problems, right? I mean, that's what business does, right? We solve problems for people by people. And that's why, we'll save the AI conversation for another day. But at the end of the day, business problems are going to be solved for people by people. And the way that that is going to happen at the next level, and I really believe this is the future of property management, is through what we're talking about today, and that is data-driven process design. Now that sounds cool, and yet the question is, like, practically, what does this look like? And so what I think this looks like is a cycle in which data is actually deployed to generate additional value creation for owners and residents and improve team performance. Now, what does that look like? We think that if you want to use an analogy, one of the things that has really elevated the industry over the last several years is the whole process of defining the financial metrics that matter, measuring those metrics. And a lot of people have adopted the NARPM accounting standards, started tracking their key financial metrics, and then comparing themselves to key benchmarks. And then as you do that, you see, hey, like Wolf has labor efficiency that's twice as good as mine. What is Wolf doing? Best practices emanate from that conversation, and that changes the way business occurs. And that's why we've seen a significant shift in financial performance, or I think one of the reasons we've seen a significant shift in financial performance in this industry over the last 4 years. Same concept, I think, can apply here in operations, where we look at what we're doing for owners and residents in terms of our core processes in operations. We define the measurables inside of each process that matter. We measure those on a consistent, if not real-time basis. We benchmark those results, and then out of that comes best practices around not just how do you do operations in general, but best practices specifically for your property marketing process, your work order process, your renewals process, so on and so forth. And what that looks like specifically in terms of best practices is, all right, like we are experiencing a lower efficiency on this process than the benchmark. How does that inform us in terms of where the bottlenecks are? If we're measuring key milestones along the process, we should be able to figure out, hey, this is the section of our process that's bogged down. How can we then improve the process based off this data? And then secondly, communicate. I didn't want to go out of slideshow mode here. Let's go back to slideshow. Present review. Here we go. Then secondly, we can communicate those results to our clients in a way that actually informs them of what their experience is relative to maybe even the industry. We can actually use this data to elevate their perspective of our service. And then finally, based off of this data, we can find new ways to create value and serve our clients at new levels. So I got a few more thoughts on that, but guys, interact with me on this. What makes sense? Holes in the framework, feedback.
For me, I think the key part is going to be the define, much like the accounting standards.
Yeah.
For example, we talk about what's your average days on market. When do you start counting? When you get the keys, when the property's ready, when the sign's in the yard. So I think defining those milestones is going to be critical, because without that, you don't have that standardization for this to develop into best practice. So I gravitated towards define, because I think that's an area that as an industry we are not solidified on. And quite frankly, when you look at the PM industry, our industry is hand-me-down. Like, everybody has got something from somebody else, and we've just kind of been bootlegging this thing and putting it together. So I think as an industry, we're trying to get from hand-me-down now into a profession. And I'm sure I'm gonna get crap for saying that, but I just said it.
My favorite example of hand-me-down in our industry is in tenant screening. If you ask property managers, what's the income to rent ratio that you recommend for approving applicants? Most property managers will say 3 to 1. They need to make $3 in income for every dollar of rent in the property that they want to rent, or they want to make 3 times the rent in income. And I always think that's hilarious, right? Because it's like, oh, really? 3.0x, not 3.1, not 2.9, not 2.7. Like, where did that come from? Somebody made it up, is the answer. No one has ever actually looked at the data to figure this out. And just take that times 1,000 in every different part of our business. And that's, part of that's just operating in a super fragmented industry where there's tens of thousands of companies competing, each managing a few hundred doors for the most part. So, I'm looking forward to being a part of taking the industry forward and defining and benchmarking operational metrics in the way that ProfitCoach and NARPM have done with the financial benchmarks. One of the things I'm really looking forward to is actually toward the end, that word communicate. I actually think that we are creating 10 times more value for our clients than they know about.
Yes.
A lot of it has to do with risk reduction, actually.
Yeah.
Things like making sure the renters have a valid renter's insurance policy before they move in, or having an after-hours emergency maintenance call line set up. So if there's a water leak, like, that can get addressed right away. Like, all of these things that happen in the background, the owners don't see a dollar from it, but what they are actually getting is a reduced risk to their asset. And if you were to take a high-functioning property management company and a low-functioning property management company that both had a equal like NOI on the property, and you ran that forward for like 10 years, the high-performing property management company would dominate because of this sort of in the background, quiet risk reduction things, industry best practices. So I'd love to have a more concrete and objective way to share with our owners all the things that we're doing as property managers behind the scenes that are actually to their benefit, but don't necessarily translate into higher rent.
Right. This go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I was gonna tag on to that too. Just like it without processes in place, it's hard to communicate those value points either. So consistently communicating that at those points, and will get forgotten and will get dropped because it feels like extra. It feels like additional work. So building that in is key. And then as an owner, being up to date, and okay, I understand that Peter and his team are doing things for me, and this is what they're doing, and this is great. I wanted to hit before you go, Dana, which I know you're probably going to touch on more, but everyone likes to get into the nitty-gritty details, the weeds of we do things differently, we do this, and a lot of that's actually true. There's a lot of regional differences, there's a lot of regional regulations. You are unique in a lot of ways that you have to run business. However, what I think we're going to talk about more today is there are key milestones that everybody has, similar to how with the NARPM accounting standards, there's key, the key setup that we can all agree on. And it's really just the milestones that are the same. Everything between point A and point B could be different, but we know this is what a completed move-in is. This is when it would occur. And if we agree on those milestones, then everyone can be benchmarked together.
That's right.
Based on key milestones, even though the work between those milestones is different.
100%. Great feedback. One of the things that excites me about this, guys, is because, and Peter, you and I were talking about this a little bit last month, and that is the whole idea of actually having a framework for data-driven value creation. Because right now, what is going on in this industry is a push towards profitability, revenue per unit, and a lot of that is driven by monetization strategies that can often be disconnected from actual value creation conceptions and or value creation awareness on whether or not, like, am I actually delivering new value in this particular fee that I'm charging or monetizing. There's often, I think, more of a focus on monetization versus value creation. But and there's no problem with monetization, but what I think is exciting about this is the ability to actually use data to understand how your value compares to your competitors, how your value compares to the industry, communicate that to your clients, and then have pricing that's based off of that and tied to that. Does that make sense? Any feedback on that?
Yeah, I mean, the difference between the value you provide and the cost of your service is called customer surplus. That's kind of the fancy economist name for that. And the way to think about this is, like, if the customer feels like they're getting a great deal, that means you have a high customer surplus, and they're feeling like the value you're delivering is way higher than the price of what you're charging. And there's a number of vendors in our space who I think that's true for. If you talk to their customers, they feel like they're getting way more than what they're paying. And as that customer surplus begins to approach zero, customers feel like they're getting less of a deal. I'm getting a raw deal. It's barely worth it for me, right? You hear some of that. And maybe you feel that way about some of the property accounting software where you feel like they keep raising the prices and I'm barely getting enough value to continue paying for the software. And so it's useful to think about this in terms of your own property management company, like how much more value are our clients receiving than what I'm charging, and where are they experiencing that? Is it the monthly reporting? Is it around lease renewals? Is it around lease up? Is it around annual accounting? Is it, are there points where the value we're delivering is way disconnected from what we're actually charging? Could be the other way too. There could be things you're charging what your customers perceive to be a lot of money for, and they feel like the value that they're getting is low. So getting more visibility into that is going to allow us to customize our pricing and our value delivery to better match what our customers actually may want to pay for or be willing to pay for in the future.
And when you're getting data, not just on how well your process is running, but the owner's experience in that process at key milestones, you're going to find out the answers to those questions and be able to improve where you're low and amplify where you're strong, and ultimately create that improve the perception of value. And I think actually use the data to find new and creative ways to create value for owners as well, deliver on that, and then monetize accordingly. All right. So we're going to, again, talk about this in the context of a real concrete example here in just a moment. But what is the other side of this equation? The other side of this equation is the team. And much the same framework applies, where you're defining what the team performance metrics are, which will have a lot of overlap with what's important to owners and residents, but there's some difference there. You're measuring those, you're benchmarking those, And again, distilling best practices around those, and not just in terms of, hey, what is valuable to the clients, but internally, how can we set up the process to make it most efficient for the team? I don't know about you guys, but I think what happens a lot in this industry is processes morph over time to accommodate edge cases and can oftentimes become very bloated as a result of trying to accommodate everyone. And nobody really like steps back and looks at that and says like, well, actually, we're really sucking at our efficiency on this process because it's so bloated, right? And we don't necessarily have data. And then one day they run into Peter or Wolf, and Peter or Wolf are like, what in the world do you guys have all these steps in your process, right? And so we can, with this data, improve the process in terms of team efficiency. And then we can use the data again to communicate. But in this case, the form of communication is coaching. And this is what excites me, where you can actually begin to benchmark, like, what is top performance for a maintenance coordinator look like? What does top performance for a leasing agent look like? And what we move is from an industry that's maybe a little focused on checking boxes to actually giving our teams data that allow them that we can use to coach them to become more competent and more skilled. And then the last piece there is, what we end up doing is like moving from a concept around how you improve labor efficiency as just being like hiring people, cheap people to check more boxes, to how can we actually elevate the ability and skills of people all over the world and give them more valuable things to do. And really it becomes more of a maximalist version of labor efficiency, instead of kind of like a, I'm going to try to get the job done the cheapest. When we have the data, we can elevate skill, create new opportunities for more value creation, hire more people, and build bigger and better businesses. That's my spiel, guys. Your thoughts on the team performance side of the equation, Wolf?
So what you're saying is value creation is not just for clients and residents, it's also for your team members.
100%.
Yeah, and so I really jive with this, because the whole let's create some new bell and whistle, attach a fee, and let's make money. Like, not only do people see through that, it's not sustainable. So you're constantly on the gimmick wheel. And if you were actually, I think, if you could find a way to truly survey 100% of your clients and ask them what really floated their boat, it's going to be your core processes executed phenomenally. That's what they want. Having a new filter program, or a new, in California, we have to, do organics now in the garbage, so garbage cans need to be washed. They don't give a rip about that and how well we execute that. It's how well do we collect rent? How well do we, monitor the maintenance of the property, take care of tenant needs, keeping leases at market rate, those core functionalities. So the value creation really comes back to systems and processes create value. And the more that you have those core processes nailed down, the more value you're going to create. All this other stuff on the fringe that's sexy, fun, and cool and hype, yeah, it may generate some more revenue, but as far as value, I firmly believe it's that core set. Now, what you define as that core, I think we could debate on that, but that's really what your owners are coming to you for. And that's what they want you to knock out of the park, not, this other stuff. So like we started doing MPS, Peter, he threatened my left arm if I didn't start doing MPS. So we started doing MPS, and the results came in. And I didn't know what to make of it because our response rate was low, but our score was really high. And so what I took from it was that we're doing a good job because we're not doing crappy enough that people are willing to complain, but we're not doing a wow enough job that people are willing to promote. We're doing good. And so I think a lot of people are content with that. But when I looked at it, it's because our core processes, we're not wowing people at our core. We're trying to wow people on the fringe. So by having this data, we're going to be able, and going through a process like this, we'll be able to really nail down the core so that we can wow at the core. Because the rest of the stuff is just like used car salesman stuff.
Yes, love it. And we can wow at the core by having a team that's been equipped with the wow, equipped with the tools in order to wow. They have clear expectations. They know what top performance looks like, and they can deliver that kind of experience.
What I really like about this too is it moves employee performance reviews or employee performance analysis to a more objective measure, right? It's less about whether I like you or whether you are present on Slack, and more about, well, let's take a look at the data. How quickly are you getting your tasks done relative to other people in the same role? So I'm a fan of that as someone who's data oriented by nature and is results oriented in my management approach. I also think that if we have this sort of granular data about processes and the teams and the individuals that are executing those processes, we can help people identify areas that they're strong in or weak in naturally by seeing how successfully and how quickly they're getting different parts of different processes done. Oh, seems like Susie really likes anything having to do with customer communication, but she drags her feet on tasks that are analytical in nature. That's really valuable. And now we can reorient her in her career or in her role to focus more on her strengths. And we can also use it as a coaching tool when we see that individuals struggle with certain types of tasks. And when we aggregate that data across the whole organization, we'll be able to identify slowdowns within our processes. Like, well, it turns out that these 2 tasks out of the 30 in our lease renewal process are taking up 80% of the time to complete. Let's dive into those. And it doesn't matter, this is affecting all the individuals. So it's not an individual performance issue, but let's drill down now into those 2 tasks and see where the opportunities are to either eliminate or automate, or what is holding up these tasks from being completed more quickly. So there's a lot of fun stuff that can come out of getting this granular process data.
100%. So guys, to summarize the slide, and then we're going to talk about property marketing. What we're talking about is moving from, yes, I'll use the term hand-me-down networking-based processes to data-driven process design, from just kind of fee maxing that's disconnected from value creation to data-driven value creation, and from sort of gut-based management to this last category here of data-driven team performance. So what does that look like practically? Well, one of the last things I want to say before I move on from this slide is the net output of this is, if you're like, what does this mean for me as a business owner? It means improved labor efficiency in a massive way. And the cool thing about this concept is that what you're looking at is the mathematical equation for labor efficiency, which is value creation, revenue per unit over team performance. If you can get revenue per unit up, team performance up, through this, labor efficiency goes up. And that is one of the significant outcomes for property managers. Now, I'm going to actually skip a little bit of this because I want to talk a little bit about property marketing. But I want to invite you to join us to collaborate on the property management operations standards creation. LeadSimple and ProfitCoach are partnering to host the Process Lounge at Broker Owner. It's right in the center of the action. It's literally between the main hall and the exhibit hall on the main floor at NARPM. And we just want to collaborate with our clients at that lounge. We're going to be serving Italian cream sodas, lattes, my brother's custom roasted coffee. I think Wolf's going to be doing some consultation there. It's just going to be a great time. You can drop by, get your process questions answered. We'd love to vibe with you on anything, but in particular, I want to invite you to join us for the property management operations standards creation. And if this sounds interesting, I just put up the poll, just say, yeah, send me the details if you're interested in collaborating. And if you're going to be in person at Broker Owner, you want to collaborate with us on the 16th, we are going to be walking through and defining the milestones for this data-driven process design construct for hopefully 8 processes. I'm going to be facilitating, and it's going to be like live arguments on what days on market really is. It's going to be a blast, okay? And we're going to have enough caffeine to keep us going. But if you're like, hey, I want to drop into the discussion for an hour or 15 minutes, whatever you can do, just stop by, and we'll send you the details if that's of interest to you. Okay.
And just to clarify, we're not making 8 processes. We're just defining the key milestones in those 8.
Yes, yes.
I'm
Right.
so hyped for this. I've been banging the drum of we need operational standards and metrics for it feels like many years, and this is like the first tangible event or announcement by anyone in the industry working on this. So I will be hanging out here quite a bit, I'm sure, and I'm just really excited about it.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna like sticky note the walls of this room. Okay. We're creating these milestone templates that we can use to move around and actually have real life collaborative discussions, because I know people have opinions about this stuff. So let's talk about, what does this look like in real life? What does this mean in real life? Zach talked about milestones, and the basic idea is that, yes, property managers run a property marketing process 100 different ways, but there's a few things that all property marketing processes do, or at least should have in common. One, the property has to have a make ready, right? Has to be ready. Two, it has to be listed. We all agree with that. Like, the property has to be listed. And three, the property has to be leased, and a tenant has to actually live in there for rent to, well, I mean, generally speaking, tenants live in these places and rent is generated. All right. So there's different types of milestones. And what I'm going to put forward here, and love your guys' feedback on that, is there's three types of milestones. There's a constraint milestone, which is what's going on internally in the organization in a process that's a key constraint. If this doesn't happen on time, everything else gets bogged down from there. It may not necessarily be something that delivers a lot of value to the owner, but it's a key internal constraint that we have to make sure happens at the right time, or else everything backs up. Then there's a value milestone, which is something in midstream in the process that could create a pop of value for the owner. We'll talk about what that could be. And then finally, completion milestone, which is, what is the end result of this process that we really care about in terms of the final result. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what this looks like in the context of specific metrics. In order to measure these milestones, we believe that there's three types of key metrics. And in order to explain this, I'm actually going to go back a few slides and talk about the hierarchy of insight. And the hierarchy of insight is really sort of the timeline of insight and metrics in any given business environment. A lot of business owners start with what is often called bank balance business management. I log into chase.com. I have money in the bank. That's my like bottom line financial metric. It's a good day. And then ProfitCoach and NARPM helped provide financial metrics to the industry, which are sort of one step up from that, but really far down the cycle of work in terms of, financial metrics such as churn or revenue per unit. And Wolf, one of the things you've talked about is like, hey, those are all derivative of what's going on in my operations, right? I just want to look at key operational metrics, outcomes that are actually driving those owner experiences. Well, there's one last step up from there, and this is real-time metrics. This is actually what's going on in the property management business today. It's the real-time game clock of whether or not today's tasks and processes are being completed on time in a way that would result in positive results on your operational metrics, your financial metrics, and ultimately your bank balance. And what we call those real-time metrics are SIGI metrics, which stands for Can I Go Home Yet? These are the metrics that tell your team what needs to be done today to win. Okay, so with that backdrop, what we're going to talk about is, and this is really what we're going to be doing at Broker Owner, is defining what are the SIGI metrics, which are what has to happen today, the outcome metrics, which is the net result of the operational process, and then the experience metrics, which is how the owner felt about that experience, such as NPS, reviews, customer effort scoring, and what are those measurements in relationship to key milestones in relationship to your core processes. Is this making sense so far, guys? Thumbs up, tracking with me? Okay, all right. So let's talk property marketing. And this is where I'm going to stick my neck out here, guys. And like, I might not have this right, but that's okay, because we can debate on it at Broker Owner. But here's the concept. So I'm going to throw out an example of a constraint milestone in a property marketing process. which is the make ready complaint. Okay. Would you guys agree that if the make ready isn't completed in a timely manner, that gums up the whole property marketing process relative to a new owner? Okay. Now, does the owner necessarily care a lot about whether or not their make ready is complete? Is that like, hey, your make ready is complete? Does that like generate a lot of positive feeling for them?
No, in fact, they could care less if it's done
Yeah.
or not. They just want the property leased, and they often try and force us to market the property before it's done.
Yeah.
Start
Yeah.
of cash flow is all they care about.
Okay. All right. So it's a constraint milestone, not a lot of value for the owner, but if you don't get this done on time, everything bottlenecks from there.
Mhm.
Agreed? Okay.
Mhm.
Does every property marketing for a new owner have probably some kind of make ready process?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So would
Yes.
you agree that this is a universal milestone that could be adopted across the industry to measure how quickly a make ready was completed relative to the PMA signing?
Yes, I will say though there are different types of make readies.
Okay,
based on
perfect.
workload.
I
So
knew that was coming, by the way. Long-term,
there's some where you
short-term.
just gotta like cobweb it and vacuum it, and there's
Yep.
others that are like full blown renovation. So
All
I
right.
think we gotta have
Well,
some
yeah.
tiers of make ready.
Also, we call this a turn. So
Yeah.
Sure. I'm getting into the debate already. This is great. Okay. All right. So, but you know what? Is the turn pretty much the same as a make ready?
yeah.
It's
All right, so it doesn't really
interchangeable
matter.
terms. Terms don't,
Okay.
and that's the other thing too. We're talking about milestones here. You can call the process whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So this is, oh
But
man,
whatever we define here is going to be hand me down for the rest of the industry. So
exactly.
I'm with Peter. Let's call it a turn. It's now national standard is turn.
All right.
The two property managers on the call have spoken.
Okay. So
I'm
now,
down. It just has to be clear.
yeah. All right. So now we've got 3 types of metrics related to the make ready. Okay. And I'm just going to throw out what the SIGI metric could be for the make ready. SIGI metric could be 0 work orders not touched today. All right. How does a make ready get done? You got to move the work orders along, right? So I don't know if you guys have feedback on this, but the basic idea is one of the ways that you can make sure that maintenance stuff is moving along as everything gets touched today. There's some kind of update happening on each of the work orders that make up that make ready every day. So feedback on that.
There's probably room to tweak that a little
100%.
bit.
Awesome.
Yeah, but it's something along those lines,
Yeah.
like 0 open work orders, or something.
Yeah. Okay, but you get the concept. All right.
Yeah.
We can debate about it, caffeinate
I would say no overdue tasks on work orders related to the make ready.
Okay. Awesome. So that's what we're going to get out the sticky notes. Okay. Because you're going to get your sticky note. I'm going to get my sticky note, and then we can banter about the sticky notes. All right. But what's the outcome metric here? The outcome metric is the make ready complete X days from the PMA signing. Okay. So that's not a can I go home yet metric. That's a historical what actually happened. All right. And so if I now have the milestone of a make ready complete, and that milestone exists in every single LeadSimple build out, regardless of what happens between your make ready start process, the start of your make ready, the start of your property marketing process, and this milestone, that can all be different. But if we have this milestone in place, we can measure it across very different property marketing processes. Make sense? Okay. Now, experience metrics aren't really relevant here because the owners don't really care about that, like you guys just said. So this is a constraint milestone. Now let's talk about what a value milestone. I've actually had property managers tell me that people do care about when their listing gets completed. Now, that there is actually a little bit of a pop of value here. If you were to say, hey, we signed you yesterday and boom, now your property's on the market. It's not as good a value as the lease being signed, but there's a sense of progress. Probably a lot of property managers don't even communicate about this, but I am arguing that this is actually a value milestone that could be measured, benchmarked, and communicated to owners. Thoughts?
Well, it's a self-preservation milestone, because when somebody signs up with you, going back to, Joey Coleman, you got 100 days to make sure that that buyer, your new client, made the right decision so they don't get buyer's remorse. So if you, the sooner you can get this thing listed, it just confirms that, yep, we made the right decision in selecting you as a property manager. Things are good to go. We're on the right track. But if you get this delayed, that buyer remorse starts creeping in. They may start shopping for another manager, but the relationship is on intensive care because we haven't hit this one milestone on time, and they're starting to doubt the decision they made in hiring you as a property manager.
Boom.
Yeah. Also, they start the clock as soon as they sign the agreement.
Yeah.
And if let's say the property has been on the market for 2 weeks, but they signed it 4 weeks ago, in their mind, it's taken you 4 weeks and you haven't even leased the property yet.
Yeah.
Right. So and I definitely think that I could see where a property owner might be willing to pay a premium for a faster listing speed, kind of like you would pay
value
more.
creation.
Yeah. You would pay more to get an Uber that's faster or closer to you. Like there's a lot of examples like this. You pay more to your airline to board sooner. Like people do pay for speed, and speed costs money. And so I think you could offer like, hey, for an extra $100 a year, anytime you have a vacancy, it takes priority with our photographer and it moves to the front of the line for getting it listed and that I could see that working.
You know what this sounds like? It sounds like data-driven value creation.
Got you.
But if you don't know your average days to get this done, you can't say what your expedited lane is going to be. So that's why you need the data.
Exactly.
TSA
All right.
pre-check.
So what's that, Zach?
TSA pre-check.
Yep, exactly. All right. So property listing complete. This is a value milestone. I just got consensus, industry consensus on this call. So what is the SIGI metric for this? The SIGI metric is 0 listings incomplete X days from PMA. Whatever your standard is, that's what your can I go home yet metric is. We need to make sure that the listing complete task in LeadSimple is checked off within X days of either the start of the property marketing process or the PMA. Okay. What is the outcome metric? It's how many days did it take to complete the listing from the date that the PMA was signed. And now, because this is a value milestone, this is where we could potentially start getting into experience metrics. Maybe this is a little too early in the process to start hitting people with surveys and NPS, but who knows? What if we could actually measure the value at this particular milestone? 3 types of experience metrics: survey feedback, and this is really going to give you qualitative feedback on, did we actually own the outcome and solve the problem in a way that made them happy? Customer effort scoring. This is answering the question, did we make it easy for them? And then experience scoring, such as NPS, CSAT, 5-star review. Did they say, wow? Thoughts?
So I don't think it's too early. Like, we build an automation for the service we're using for NPS, and one of our triggers is the completion of a task in our make ready.
Boom.
So I don't think it's too early to ask if we wowed them.
Sweet. All right. So let's talk the final type of milestone here, which is the completion milestone. And this is lease signed, property occupied, right? Do we agree on that? That would be the completion milestone of the property marketing process?
Property occupied specifically, because sometimes you'll have a lease signed, but the tenant doesn't move in for 2 weeks and they back out or whatever. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. What's the SIGI metric here? Well, there is no SIGI metric since the process is done. Okay. But there is an outcome metric, and we're probably going to have lively debate on this on next Tuesday on number of days vacant, number of days on market, which are 2 discrete things and obviously have about 7 iterations each as to how they get measured. But both are important, right? Like, how many days was it vacant, which would be PMA signing to occupancy, and how many days was it on the market. My personal opinion is that days vacant is more significant than days on market, because that's the one that actually defines the amount of revenue that they didn't get.
Yep.
All right. So then experience metrics. This is definitely at the end of this process where you would want to start deploying survey feedback, customer effort scoring, NPS, CSAT, 5-star reviews. And maybe you use one type of survey or one type of experience metric for 1/3 of your leases, another type for another third, and another type for another third. Because you probably don't want to send 3 different things to the same people, right? But getting different kinds of feedback in terms of qualitative and quantitative feedback on different aspects of your process is, I think, the opportunity here. Thoughts?
This all makes sense to me. My only comment would be, I think of the turn or the make ready as a completely separate process from property marketing.
Yep.
Okay.
Those are quite distinct because there's actually times when you can have a turn without a leasing process, and you could actually have a leasing process without a turn if an owner by some miracle handed you a unit that was rent ready. So but everything we're discussing still applies. So
yeah, makes sense. Yeah,
we run ours in parallel too.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so that's the basic concept here. And if you look back at the whole format of what we just talked about, what you've seen is that we've used data to define what matters in a property marketing process, measure, benchmark, and have best practices around that. Because now I can understand how fast I'm completing this process relative to my peers in the industry and benchmarks about specific milestones inside that process. I can use that data to improve my process, communicate that back to clients, and as Peter just suggested, find new ways to create new value. Wow, they actually valued the uber fast version of my property marketing process, and they're willing to pay a premium for it. That's what we call data-driven value creation. On the team side, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so we'll have something more to brag about than just door count. We can brag about our speed of doing certain processes now.
Yes, you can actually use data to separate yourself from the competition in the sales process and prove it to your clients.
Way more important.
That's the key. That's what I was going to flag was the ability to actually prove to your clients how you deliver value, because there's so many people that don't have that, and you were able to just really easily turn it back around on the client. Just like, have you asked them if they're comparing you or they're trying to drive your price down or whatever? Here's some quick questions you should ask them. What are their days on market? What is their responsiveness? All those things can help you differentiate yourself.
100%. And then on the team side of things, now we actually have data around top performers and low performers, and how the top performers and low performers in our company stack up to industry performers relative to various roles. Is it going to be complicated? Yes. Pod, squad, departmental, I get all of that. We'll figure it out. But the point here is that we will now have the ability to define, measure, benchmark, and have best practices around team performance in a way that results in data-driven team performance. We envision a world which this kind of clarity actually creates a better work environment for the team, because they know what success looks like and they know exactly what it takes to win every day. So what does this mean to you? What it means is going from average to benchmark on labor efficiency, okay? It means going from average to benchmark on value creation and revenue per unit. And ultimately going from, mediocrity on profitability, average of 11%, to top level, benchmark level profitability. All of these operational metrics then help actually drive the financial performance of the business, and you can start to connect the dots between what's going on in my property marketing process to my bottom line. That is what I love.
The way I think about this is, when you think about DLER, there's a numerator and there's a denominator, and the numerator, if I'm remembering my fraction definitions right, is essentially like, it breaks out to revenue per unit, right? And so that is fairly easy to measure. It's fairly easy to move, and it's fairly easy to benchmark, thanks to all the work previously done by ProfitCoach and NERPM. What we're about to do is zoom in on the denominator, which is the labor piece, which previously has been very opaque, and the work that is going to be ongoing. I'm assuming this is going to take quite a while to really complete. But once it's done, it's going to allow us to fine tune that denominator the way we have the numerator in the equation of DLER.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. And this is going to have practical implications for people, helping people win every day and become and achieve more than they thought possible. That's something I know that we're all passionate about on this call. All right, so next steps. I want to help you get this conversation going in your company, and give you the opportunity to schedule a data-driven process design diagnostic with our team to help you get clarity on what's working, not working with your current processes, identify what needs to be true in order to maximize efficiency, and then start revolutionizing your workday by defining these "can I go home yet" metrics and what it would mean for your team to win every day. ProfitCoach, as I already mentioned, has an integration with LeadSimple, which allows for this kind of real-time data on your processes, to where you can have a dashboard with your "can I go home yet" metrics that gives your team a view of the glass balls that can't be dropped today, and actually gives them visibility in terms of, here are the specific things that need to be at 0 by the end of the day. I can prioritize my day and work around that. And it's very interactive, such that your team double clicks on any of the numbers and it pulls up what specific processes in LeadSimple need attention, takes them into their LeadSimple workflow. And we're super excited about the kind of clarity and success for individuals in your team that can come from having that sort of clarity on what has to happen every day to win. So if you would like to take the next step in terms of understanding what this whole concept of data-driven process design means in your company, I would just love to have the opportunity for our team to meet with you, do a little bit of a diagnostic on what is going on in your business, and start actually helping you with our framework for defining your "can I go home yet" metrics. And what that looks like is, for every process, what is the outcome that has to be true for this to be a quality experience for the owner or the resident, and then what has to happen today in order for that outcome to occur. So let's get this conversation going. We'd be happy to just help you understand how these concepts can apply in your business. And if that would be helpful, just say yes on the poll there, and we'll reach out to schedule that. Okay, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. As we think about this whole idea of value creation, data-driven process design, data-driven team performance, we're going to start digging into this at the next level on May 15th. I think you guys all said yes to joining on May 15th. And that's going to be after we've done the real-time property management operations standards creation. And if all goes according to plan, when we come back on May 15th, we are going to have milestones defined for 8 core processes that you can begin to make sure are integrated into your processes, and begin to think about the metrics that you can measure relative to those milestones, and will give you the framework and the ideas and the structure around that on May 15th. So that's what's happening. Join us again on May 15th. But guys, final thoughts on what this means to people and how they should think about taking action on this. Not everybody at once.
I'll start. For me, I think where this gets really exciting is now the smaller company, the boutique property manager, because we've all heard that they're either going to future, you're either going to be boutique or you're going to be big, right? And so the big guys have the revenue, the resources, and all that to build these types of dashboards. But for those that want to stay boutique, like myself, we now have access to this data that's going to allow us to wow. And to not just go from our gut instinct on what we think our clients want, but we're actually going to have data that says, you know what, this is where you're wowing people, refine here, because your processes are never done. They're living, breathing things. And you don't go to the doctor and hope that he guesses. You want him to collect data so that he can make a decision. Yeah. You should use the same tactics for your processes. Use data to tell you where you need to tune up, where you need to refine, and where you need to make major changes. So really excited about this.
Well said, Wolf.
Yeah, what I think about here, 2 quick thoughts. I know we're past the hour, but one is this is like prior to now, we had the opportunity to measure our revenue per unit and benchmark ourselves and understand, we just talked about how that's like the numerator. What I love this is going to let us do is once we do that, that's kind of like step 1 and 2. Now we get to decide where we want to sit within the marketplace and how to charge for that. It's kind of a nuanced point, but like deciding how to deliver value and how much ties together with your pricing strategy very closely. Basically, it lets you decide, am I going to be Walmart or am I going to be Nordstrom's for property management? And like you could say that before and you could charge random prices that you thought aligned with that. But now you're going to be able to actually figure out, what do I have to deliver to be a Nordstrom's of property management? And what can I afford to scale back on and be the Walmart and charge a lower price, but still have an experience that people are willing to pay for. People do shop at Walmart. So that sort of fine-grained detail I'm looking forward to for our industry. The last thing I'll say is what we're talking about today is like Fortune 100 company level nuance and detail and analysis. Like this is like global manufacturing. Like I can't stress how advanced some of these topics are and powerful, more important than advanced. And the fact that we have access to them as property management company owners is like legendary. And it also speaks to how hard what we do on a day-to-day basis is, that we're just like scrounging around for the most powerful tools we can possibly find to make our experiences better for our owners and for our team members, that we need to get to this level of analysis and refinement and operational excellence speaks to, I think, both how hard it is to succeed in property management. So congrats to anyone listening who has been even moderately successful. And also just how awesome it is to have partners like ProfitCoach and LeadSimple with us on this journey.
Well said. And huge props to LeadSimple for getting this kind of step-by-step workflow out to the industry such that we can begin to measure these kinds of things and have these kinds of conversations. So super excited about the ProfitCoach LeadSimple collaboration here. Zach, wrap us up.
Yeah, that's pretty much excited for this. We're just getting going. We launched a lot of new awesome features just recently as well. Process visualization will be something we'll talk about at Berkompas too. It's really awesome. Fully visualizing the flow chart of your process. You can share it with your team, make it really easy to train them as they're using it as well. So there's been a ton of updates over the last 12, 24 months really. So if you haven't taken a look at it recently, it's significantly changed, and we're continuing to roadmap for this year is really exciting too. So lots of new stuff to come, and this is a big focus, supporting this and providing the data to allow for this type of dashboarding and benchmarking for the whole industry.
Awesome. All right, folks, join us at the Process Lounge in a couple days. Next Tuesday, we're going to be there all day, sipping coffee, drinking Italian sodas. And it's going to be a great time working on the PM Operations Standards creation. Hope you can join us there. And next time on May 15th, 12 p.m. Central, where we take what we come up with and share it with you with this fine panel of legendary PMs. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day. Wolf, Peter, Zach, thanks so much. We'll see you in a few weeks, and see you next week.